The rain was pouring down. Drops drummed against the roof of the small cafe, creating a monotonous, soothing noise. Charlotte sat by the window, holding a warm cup of herbal tea in her hands.
Welcome to the Important Stories channel. If you like my story, give me a like and subscribe. It's important to me, and we continue.
57 wasn't an age for loneliness, she often thought, but fate had decided otherwise. Her husband had passed away 10 years ago, leaving behind only emptiness and many unfulfilled hopes. Her children had long since grown up and were living their own lives in another city. She was used to quiet evenings, books, and infrequent phone calls. Today was a special day, their wedding anniversary. 30 years ago, on this very day, it had rained just as heavily, but back then it had seemed like a good omen, as if nature itself was weeping with happiness alongside them. She smiled at her memories, and a slight sadness touched her heart. A man entered the cafe. Tall, slightly stooped, with gray at his temples. Something about his silhouette seemed familiar to Charlotte, but she couldn't quite place it. He looked around, as if searching for someone, and his gaze swept across her table. For a moment, their eyes met. Something stirred within Charlotte, like an old, long-forgotten melody suddenly playing again. The man frowned, as if trying to remember something, and then slowly made his way to her table. "Excuse me, do I know you?" he asked, his voice a little hoarse, but with a warm undertone. Charlotte raised her eyebrows in surprise. She looked at him intently, trying to discern through the veil of time the features of someone who had once been very important to her. Her heart suddenly beat faster. Could it be him? It couldn't be. So many years had passed. He must have changed. But something elusive in his eyes, in the way he slightly tilted his head. "Excuse me, I don't think so," Charlotte replied uncertainly, although a thrilling premonition was already stirring inside her. The man looked at her attentively for a few more seconds, and suddenly his face lit up with a slight smile. "Charlotte? Is that you?" Her name, spoken in that voice, sounded like an echo from the distant past. Charlotte felt a lump rise in her throat. Could it really be him? Her first love. The person she hadn't seen for over 30 years. Charlotte stared at him, unable to utter a word. Fragments of memories flashed through her mind: school dances, shy confessions, first kisses under a starry sky. His name was Mason. How could she have forgotten? But the years had left their mark. Wrinkles around his eyes, deeper lines around his mouth, gray hairs touching his dark hair. And yet, it was him. Her Mason. Mason. My God, is it really you? Charlotte finally breathed out. A warm, sincere smile spread across his face, making Charlotte's heart clench. That same smile that had once made her world seem brighter. "I didn't recognize you right away." "You haven't changed at all," Mason said, and genuine joy shone in his eyes. Charlotte felt her cheeks flush. The compliment, spoken after so many years, felt unexpectedly pleasant. "It's been so long. What are you doing here?" she asked, still not quite believing what was happening. "I'm just passing through. Business in a neighboring town. Saw this cafe, the rain is so heavy, decided to stop for a coffee. And then there you are." "It's unbelievable," Mason shook his head, as if not believing his own eyes. He pulled up a chair and sat down at her table without asking permission. Charlotte didn't mind. A storm of emotions was raging inside her: surprise, excitement, a vague joy, and an inexplicable nostalgia. "Are you here alone?" Charlotte asked, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. "Yes. My wife passed away 3 years ago. The children are grown up, live far away. What about you? How has your life been?" She knew that Mason had had a wife and children. Once, this thought had caused her sharp pain, but time had dulled the intensity of her feelings, leaving only a slight sadness for what could have been. "My husband passed away 10 years ago." The children have also moved away, Charlotte replied quietly, lowering her eyes. An awkward silence fell, broken only by the sound of rain against the window. Two lonely people, whose fates had once been closely intertwined, had met again after decades. Something unspoken hung in the air, something important that they both felt but didn't dare to voice. "Maybe you'll have a coffee with me?" Mason offered, breaking the silence. Charlotte raised her eyes and met his gaze. In his eyes, she saw not only sadness but also a kind of timid, barely perceptible expectation. "Yes, I think I will," she replied softly, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Over coffee, the conversation flowed slowly. They reminisced about their school years, funny incidents, mutual friends they had long since lost track of. They talked about their first love, shy, pure, naive, which had seemed like a whole universe to them back then. There was a slight sadness in Mason's voice as he spoke about his wife, about the happy years they had spent together, and about the emptiness that remained after her passing. Charlotte listened, sympathizing with his pain, and at the same time a strange, timid feeling was born in her heart, as if a faint ray of hope was breaking through the veil of sadness. They talked about their children, their grandchildren, their current hobbies. It turned out they had a lot in common, a love for reading, for quiet walks in nature, for old melodies. Time flew by unnoticed, and the rain outside gradually subsided. "You know, Charlotte, this meeting feels surreal," Mason said, looking thoughtfully at his cup. "Like fate decided to play a joke. Or give a gift," Charlotte added quietly. Mason raised his eyes and met her gaze. A new, inexplicable tension arose between them. The past suddenly ceased to be a distant memory and became something alive, pulsating between them. "I need to go," Mason said, looking at his watch with regret. "But I would really like to see you again. If you don't mind." Charlotte's heart beat faster. She had been waiting for these words, although she had been afraid to hear them. "I would like that very much," she replied with a slight smile. They exchanged phone numbers, and Mason left, disappearing into the evening twilight. Charlotte sat at the table for a long time, looking at her empty cup. A strange mixture of excitement and quiet joy filled her soul. A chance meeting after so many years. Was it a coincidence or the beginning of something new? A mystery she very much wanted to solve. A few days flew by like a dream. Charlotte kept picking up the phone, rereading Mason's number, but couldn't bring herself to call first. Doubts tormented her. What if he was just being polite? What if this meeting meant nothing to him? It was foolish at her age to indulge in impossible dreams. But the memories of that meeting, of his warm gaze and shy smile, wouldn't leave her alone. Finally, on Thursday evening, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat for a moment, and then began to pound wildly. "Hello," she said uncertainly. "Charlotte? It's Mason. Sorry it's so late." Mason. "Hello. I must confess, I was waiting for your call." "Really?" "I was afraid I was being too intrusive." There was a slight hesitation in his voice. "No, not at all. I was very happy to talk to you again," Charlotte replied sincerely. They talked for almost an hour. They reminisced about little things from the past. Mason told her about his work, about his grandchildren whom he loved very much. Charlotte spoke about her books, about the quiet evenings that now didn't seem so lonely anymore. At the end of the conversation, Mason suggested meeting again. Charlotte gladly agreed. They arranged to have dinner at a small restaurant on the outskirts of the city in 2 days. Those 2 days dragged on agonizingly long for Charlotte. She was as nervous as a girl before her first date. She went through her wardrobe, trying to choose the most suitable outfit. Her reflection in the mirror seemed to her sometimes too old, sometimes too tired. Finally, the long-awaited evening arrived. Charlotte stood by the window, watching the slowly falling snow. Light snowflakes swirled in the lamplight, creating a magical atmosphere. She put on her favorite pastel-colored dress and applied light makeup. In the mirror, a woman looked back at her, with a faint but stubborn spark of hope in her eyes. Mason arrived on time. He looked a little flustered. "You look beautiful," he said, handing her a bouquet of delicate cream roses. Charlotte felt her cheeks flush. This simple compliment touched her deeply. The restaurant had a cozy atmosphere. Dimmed lights, soft music, flickering candles on the tables. They talked about everything and nothing, enjoying each other's company. Charlotte felt relaxed and at ease, as if those long years of separation hadn't happened. Mason was attentive and caring, and his jokes made her laugh genuinely. At one point, Mason took her hand and gently squeezed her palm. "Charlotte, these days we've spent together, they mean a lot to me. I never thought that after so many years I could feel again." He paused, as if searching for the right words. Charlotte held her breath, feeling her heart begin to beat faster and faster. "Feel alive again," Mason finished, his gaze becoming serious and deep. "You've awakened something in me that I thought had long since died out." She didn't know what to say. Mason's words were unexpected. Suddenly, Mason's phone rang. He apologized and left the table. Charlotte watched him go, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over her, replacing the warmth. What was he talking about so tensely on the phone? "Feel alive again," Mason finished, his gaze becoming serious and deep. "You've awakened something in me that I thought had long since died out." Charlotte was silent, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. She didn't know what to say. Mason's words were unexpected and exciting. Suddenly, Mason's phone rang. He apologized and left the table. Charlotte watched him go, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over her, replacing the warmth. What was he talking about so tensely on the phone? His face looked troubled. Mason returned after a few minutes, his face worried. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. I need to leave urgently. Something unexpected has happened." Charlotte felt disappointed but tried not to show it. "Is it something serious?" she asked with concern. "Yes, quite. I'll call you tomorrow, I'll explain everything." "I'm so sorry again." Mason quickly paid the bill and, casting a guilty glance at Charlotte, hurried away. Charlotte remained sitting at the table, staring at the flickering candle. What could have happened? Could it be something related to his past? To the life she had so unexpectedly stumbled into? The evening was ruined. Charlotte returned home in a dejected mood. Mason's phone remained silent all the next day. Her anxiety grew with each passing minute. She tried to reassure herself, convincing herself that surely something insignificant had happened, but deep down, a bad feeling was growing. The next morning, the long-awaited call finally came. But the voice on the other end of the line didn't belong to Mason. "Hello? Charlotte? My name is Sophia. I'm Mason's daughter." "Hello, Sophia," Charlotte said with difficulty, feeling a chill run through her. "I need to meet with you. It concerns my father." Sophia's voice sounded cold and demanding. The meeting was set in the same cafe where she and Mason had first met. Charlotte sat at her table, anxiously awaiting Sophia's arrival. The door opened, and a young woman with a piercing, scrutinizing gaze entered. "Are you Charlotte?" Sophia asked, without a greeting. "Yes. Are you Sophia?" "I don't like that you're communicating with my father," Sophia blurted out, as if accusing Charlotte of a crime. Charlotte was taken aback by such directness. "Excuse me, but I don't understand. We're just old acquaintances, we met by chance." "By chance?" Sophia scoffed. "My father isn't one for coincidences. And I know you were his first love." A tense silence hung in the air. Charlotte felt her face flush. How did she know that? That was a very long time ago, Sophia. We have no plans, Charlotte tried to explain. Maybe not now. But I know how my father can get caught up in the past. And right now he doesn't need any new shocks. He's still grieving my mother's death very deeply. A hint of pain flashed in Sophia's voice, and Charlotte felt a twinge of sympathy for this young woman for the first time. I understand your concern, Sophia. But believe me, I don't want to cause your father any pain. Our meeting was accidental, and we were just reminiscing about the past. Reminiscing about a past that could destroy his present, Sophia interrupted sharply. Please, Charlotte. Leave my father alone. He needs time to cope with his loss. And your reappearance is only reopening old wounds. Sophia's words echoed in Charlotte's head. Leave my father alone. Pain pierced her heart. Was she really causing Mason pain? She had thought their meetings brought them both joy. I never wanted to hurt him, Sophia, Charlotte said quietly, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. For me, this meeting was also unexpected. We're just old friends. Friends who once loved each other, Sophia interrupted harshly. And now, when my father is lonely and vulnerable, you reappear. It's not a coincidence. It was a coincidence, Charlotte repeated firmly, raising her gaze to Sophia. And if it causes Mason pain, I will, of course, stop our meetings. But I don't think it does. He called me himself, he suggested meeting again himself. He's just a polite man, Sophia snapped. He doesn't want to offend you. But he needs time. Time to recover after my mother's death. Your appearance right now is inappropriate. Charlotte felt anger rising within her. Who was this young woman to decide for a grown man what he needed and what he didn't? Excuse me, Sophia, but I don't think it's your place to decide what your father needs, Charlotte said, trying to remain calm. He's an adult and has the right to choose who he communicates with. You don't understand. Sophia exclaimed. He's taking the loss very hard. He's become withdrawn, lost interest in life. And your appearance, it could give him false hope, and then it will hurt even more. I don't want him to suffer. Sincere pain could be heard in Sophia's voice, and Charlotte's anger subsided slightly. She saw in the young woman's eyes not only hostility towards her but also genuine concern for her father. I understand your concern, Sophia, Charlotte sighed. But I don't think my intentions are bad. I was just happy to see an old friend again. Please, Charlotte, Sophia's voice softened. Please, for my father's sake. Don't call him anymore. Give him time. Charlotte was silent, lowering her eyes. She felt guilty, although she didn't understand exactly what she was guilty of. She had simply responded to a suddenly rekindled feeling, to the nostalgia for the past. Okay, Sophia, Charlotte finally said, barely holding back her tears. I won't call him. Sophia sighed in relief. Thank you. I hope you understand. Sophia got up from the table, and Charlotte watched her go, feeling drained. It was over before it had even begun. The second attempt to find happiness had crashed against a wall of misunderstanding and the pain of the past. Charlotte returned home, and the silence of her apartment seemed even more oppressive than before. She sat in her armchair and stared out the window at the slowly falling snow. Emptiness and bitter disappointment filled her soul. Would fate always play such cruel tricks on her? Sending hope only to cruelly take it away? In the evening, the phone rang. Charlotte reluctantly picked it up. Hello? Charlotte? It's Mason. Her heart skipped a beat. He had called after all. Mason. Charlotte breathed out. Charlotte, I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. Something unpleasant happened. Sophia came to see me, Charlotte said directly, not wanting to beat around the bush. Silence hung on the other end of the line. Charlotte could only hear his heavy breathing. She spoke with you? About what? Mason finally asked, tension in his voice. She asked me to leave you alone, said that you're having a hard time right now, that I'm reopening old wounds. My God, Mason whispered. I'm so sorry, forgive me. I didn't know she would do that. Why didn't you tell me about her? Charlotte asked, a hint of hurt in her voice. I didn't want to upset you. After my wife passed away, Sophia became very protective of me. She thinks she knows what's best for me. But didn't you tell her that we're just friends? Charlotte asked incredulously. I tried. But she's very worried. She's afraid I'll hurt myself again. She loved her mother very much, and her passing was a big blow to her. She's afraid of losing me too. Sincere pain echoed in Mason's voice, and Charlotte felt her anger give way to sympathy. I understand her, Mason. But she's wrong to try and control your life. I know, Charlotte. And I'll talk to her. I promise. Our meeting, it really means a lot to me. You brought a light back into my life that I thought had gone out forever. Then why did you leave so suddenly that evening? What happened? She asked with curiosity. It was work-related. An unexpected call. I had to leave urgently. I'm sorry it all turned out this way. Charlotte felt a strange doubt. Something in his voice didn't sound entirely convincing. It's all right, Mason. The main thing is that you called. I want to see you again, Charlotte. As soon as possible. They agreed to meet in 2 days at a small country cafe, away from prying eyes. Charlotte eagerly awaited this meeting, although deep down, an inexplicable unease still lingered. On the appointed day, Charlotte arrived at the cafe a little early. She sat at a table by the window and began to watch the passing cars. Suddenly, her gaze caught a familiar figure getting out of a nearby car. It was Sophia. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man Charlotte had never seen before. They were talking animatedly, and at one point, the man put his arm around Sophia. Charlotte felt her heart clench painfully. What was happening? Why was Sophia here? And who was this man? A few minutes later, Mason entered the cafe. He looked tired and a little agitated. His gaze immediately met Charlotte's. Charlotte, I'm sorry I'm late. There were some small issues. But before he could reach her table, Sophia approached him. Dad, we need to talk, she said, her voice firm. Mason sighed and gave Charlotte a guilty look. Charlotte, please wait for me. This won't take long. Charlotte nodded, feeling anxiety wash over her. The conversation between Mason and Sophia was heated. Charlotte couldn't make out the words, but she could see the tension on their faces. The man who had arrived with Sophia stood nearby, watching them with a grim expression. Suddenly, Sophia turned to Charlotte and shouted, It's because of her, Dad. Because of her, you're reliving the past again. She's destroying our family. Sophia's words struck like a bolt of lightning. Charlotte felt the gazes of the cafe patrons turn to her. She blushed with shame and confusion. Destroying their family? What family, Sophia? Mason asked, bewildered, his voice trembling with anger and hurt. Mom has been gone for 3 years. What are you talking about? The one we had. Before she showed up. Sophia yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Charlotte. The man beside her placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her down. Charlotte sat at her table, feeling as if she were in the crosshairs. The gazes of the cafe patrons bored into her, full of curiosity and judgment. She wanted to get up and leave, but her legs felt rooted to the floor. Don't you dare talk about Charlotte like that. Mason raised his voice. She has nothing to do with this. Has nothing to do with it? What have you become since she appeared? You're back in the clouds, reminiscing about the past. You've forgotten about Mom. Sophia's words hit Mason like a whip. He paled and lowered his head. That's not true, Sophia. I will always remember Mom. But I want to feel happy again. I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life. You're not alone. You have me. Sophia exclaimed. You're my daughter. I love you and I'm grateful for your care. But this is a different kind of love. I deserve happiness. And Charlotte makes me happy. Charlotte listened to this conversation in astonishment. Did Mason really feel something more for her than just nostalgia for the past? The man standing next to Sophia stepped forward. Listen, Mason. Sophia is just worried about you. She thinks this woman. Shut up, Oleg. Sophia interrupted him sharply. This is none of your business. Dad, please think. Sophia pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. Don't do anything foolish. You'll regret it. Mason sighed wearily and looked at Charlotte. Pain and determination were visible in his eyes. Charlotte, I'm sorry for this spectacle. Let's get out of here. He walked over to her table, took her hand, and helped her up. They left the cafe under the disgruntled murmurs of the patrons. Oleg shouted something angrily after them, but Mason paid no attention. They walked in silence down the street until they reached a small park. They sat down on a bench under a snow-covered tree. I'm sorry, Mason said again, his voice muffled. I didn't want you to see that. What was that, Mason? Why is Sophia behaving like that? Mason sighed and looked up at the snow-covered branches of the trees. You see, Charlotte. After Mom passed away, Sophia became very possessive. She was always very attached to me, but after her passing, that attachment became unhealthy. She's afraid that I'll find someone to replace Mom in my heart, even though that's not the case at all. But why is she so hostile towards me? She knows about our past. Someone told her. Maybe old friends or relatives. She thinks you want to destroy her memories of her mother, to take her place. It's absurd, of course, but it's very difficult to convince her otherwise. And this Oleg, who is he? Oleg? He's her young man. They're going to get married. I think he's also adding fuel to the fire. He doesn't like that I'm paying so much attention to someone other than Sophia. What are we going to do? She asked quietly, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. Mason took her hand and squeezed her palm tightly. We'll be together, Charlotte. No matter what. I'll talk to Sophia. I'll explain to her what you mean to me. And that her mother will always be in my heart, and no one will replace her. But I deserve happiness. And I want to be happy with you. Such determination burned in his eyes that Charlotte felt genuine hope for the first time in a long time. Mason kept his promise. He spoke to Sophia long and frankly. The conversation was difficult, emotional, full of mutual grievances and misunderstandings. Charlotte waited for his call, tormented by uncertainty. Every ring of the phone made her jump. Finally, the next evening, the phone rang. Mason's voice sounded tired, but there was a new resolve in it. Charlotte, we need to meet. They met in the same park, on the same bench under the snow-covered tree. A quiet winter sadness hung in the air. Well, how did it go? Charlotte asked anxiously. Mason sighed and took her hands in his. His palms were cold. It was hard. Sophia is very upset. She doesn't understand me. She thinks I'm betraying Mom's memory. But you explained to her, about us? Yes. I told her what you mean to me. That this isn't an attempt to replace Mom, but simply a desire to be happy again. And what did she say? She cried. Said I was making a mistake. That you want to take advantage of me. Oleg was there too. He's against you. And what do you intend to do, Mason? Mason looked her straight in the eyes. I love you, Charlotte. And I won't let anyone stand between us. Sophia is my daughter, and I will always love her. But I won't let her destroy my happiness. Charlotte felt tears welling up in her eyes. Mason's words were like balm to her wounded heart. But she's your family. My family is you too, Charlotte. And I hope that Sophia will understand that in time. She needs time. But that doesn't mean we have to part. He gently kissed her cold hands. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Tears of joy streamed down Charlotte's cheeks. She couldn't believe her happiness. After so many years of loneliness, fate had given her a second chance at love. They sat on the bench, embracing, under the quiet whisper of falling snow. A new hope was born in their hearts, fragile but strong. Several months passed. Winter gave way to spring. The sun shone brighter, and the first leaves unfurled on the trees. Life gradually returned to normal. Mason and Charlotte spent a lot of time together. They walked in the park, went to the movies, and had quiet evenings at home. Their feelings grew deeper and stronger. They savored every moment, as if afraid that this fragile happiness might disappear at any moment. Mason continued to talk to Sophia. These were long and difficult conversations. Sophia still didn't approve of their relationship, but the hostility in her voice was gone. She saw how happy her father was, and that seemed to soften her heart a little. Oleg also gradually changed his attitude, seeing the sincerity of Mason and Charlotte's feelings. One day, Mason invited Charlotte for a walk to the same cafe where they had first met again after so many years. A bouquet of her favorite cream roses stood on their table. Do you remember this day, Charlotte? Mason asked with a smile. It was raining cats and dogs. Charlotte smiled back. It feels like it was yesterday. Mason took her hand and looked into her eyes. Charlotte, you brought me back to life. You filled my days with meaning and joy. I can't imagine a single day without you. He took a small velvet box out of his pocket and opened it. Inside lay an antique ring with a delicate sapphire. Charlotte, will you marry me? Tears of happiness welled up in Charlotte's eyes. She held out her hand, and Mason slipped the ring onto her finger. Yes, Mason. Of course, yes, she whispered, her voice trembling with overwhelming emotion. At that moment, Sophia entered the cafe. She walked over to their table and stopped. Charlotte held her breath, waiting for her reaction. Dad, I want you to be happy, Sophia said quietly, and for the first time in a long time, Charlotte saw warmth in her eyes. If Charlotte makes you happy, I won't stand in the way. Mason hugged his daughter. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot to me. Sophia looked at Charlotte and smiled faintly. Take care of him, Charlotte. He's a good man. Charlotte nodded, and tears streamed down her cheeks again. This time, they were tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. A chance meeting after years had truly changed her life. Their story, which had begun in the pouring rain, had found its bright and touching ending.
Thank you for listening to my story.